Hello, it's January 3rd at a little bit after 3 o'clock. I was going to do a Facebook Live just now, and then I realized that I'm still in Facebook jail. I can't do a live for a couple more days. They don't want me to speak. I'm being censored. So, yes, this is America. Yeah. But anyway, beside that point, I just wanted to touch base with everybody. We haven't talked in a long time, and we've had all our holidays, had a nice holiday season, and just want to get up to speed on what to expect here in January. It's going to be a lot of big events happening in January, so we just want to talk about a few little things. First of all, there is just a ton of disinformation out in the world today. If you turn on the news, CNN, NBC, CBS, you get filled with disinformation. You know all about that. The fake news, as Donald Trump calls it. And I think everybody is seeing through their game. I just want to warn folks, though, that we have the same thing on the right side. People are looking for new news sources. They're tuning into a lot of internet traffic, and we're hearing some kind of outrageous stories on the right side. Just one example, there was a fake video going around about the bombing in Nashville showing that the detonation didn't happen at the RV, it happened across the street, down the street. And if you take a good look at that video, it's very clear that this was a faked video. And I don't understand why people would want to do things like that, but it just causes chaos and distrust in all the news sources. We've been looking for some good news sources, and we're watching OAN. We're watching. I'm getting hand signals from behind the camera. We're watching OAN. We're watching Newsmax. We're watching some internet stuff called MTD. They put on a news show. They tend to come up with some good stuff. The Epoch Times, or Epic Times as I call it. They have a lot of good information coming out, and they seem to pretty much stick to the facts. If you haven't heard of Professor Toto, Shane Vaughn, he comes out with some interesting updates sometimes. He's not a newsman, he's a Mississippi preacher, but he's always got a good gospel view of things. And he said something yesterday that I thought was excellent. He said, fake news on the left and then misinformation on the right, they're two ditches on the same road to truth, right? So let's stay between the ditches. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that warning out there. I liked listening to Lynn Wood, but he's one that's stirring the pot and throwing out a lot of accusations where we can't see the evidence. So I'm not calling him a liar. I'm not saying he's the truth. I'm just saying he's stirring the pot, and there's no hard facts there that we can lean on. I like a lot of what he says, but just take it with a grain of salt till we see some facts. What do we know? What can we lean on? Well, there was some news the other day that the 2020 census, by law, was supposed to be out, I believe, on December 31st or January 1st. I don't remember the exact date, but it missed the deadline. So why is that a big deal? Well, based on the 2010 census, the United States does a census every 10 years. Based on the 2010 census, and then every year they adjust populations locally based on whatever information, change of addresses and driver's license people applying for licenses, things like that. They update their birth and death records in the county. They update their populations that way. And we know that there was precincts who claimed there were more votes cast in certain precincts than voting age adults that live in those precincts. Now the 2020 census would be fresh, new information that would be able to support or refute those claims. So it would be kind of handy to have the 2020 census in our hands before January 6th. That would have been very helpful. Apparently it's not going to make the deadline, so we're not going to find out that information in time to help us. The Supreme Court did rule that they have to remove illegal aliens from the census report, which is good in my opinion, and it will affect the number of representatives in the House of Representatives. We also know that besides the census data, we talk about things that we know for sure. We know that certain states have refused to clean up their voter rolls, even though some local clerks try to do it, or people that get in office try to clean up the voter rolls. There's people in power who do not want the voter rolls cleaned up. What do I mean by cleaning up the voter rolls? Well, that's taking dead people off the voter rolls, removing people who have moved out of state. Why would you want those people on your voter rolls? Well, like the previous claim, if there's more votes than voting age people in your precinct, that would look bad. But if you have a bunch of dead people and former residents listed on your voter registration, you can honestly report that 84% of registered voters voted. There's no mention of how many were deceased, how many people are on the registration that are deceased or moved out of the area already. So that helps if you wanted to stuff the ballot box in certain counties. Now, people hear that and they think it's conspiracy theory. There has been thousands of convictions for doing just that over the years. And a lot of them happened previously in Philadelphia, which is no surprise. Now we see Philadelphia as the center of this. We've had voter fraud convictions in Michigan. As a matter of fact, one of the assistants of Kwame, I can't think of his name right now, Kilpatrick, yes, Kwame Kilpatrick, his assistant was hired to help with this election. So, this stuff isn't conspiracy theory. There's people that have gone to jail for doing exactly this kind of thing. Why we can't get the courts to sit and listen to any of the evidence this year is beyond me. It's troubling. I know the courts don't want to be the arbiters of elections because that kills the separation of powers, which is very important to our constitutional government. But yet we need somebody to enforce the rule of law. And if the courts refuse to participate in any case of election law, then that really leaves us in a bad spot. So we were talking about, what do we know? We know laws were broken. Election laws were broken in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, and others. There were invalid requests for absentee ballots in Wisconsin. Their Supreme Court ruled that that's the case. So that's not a question, it's not a conspiracy theory, that's a fact, that illegal ballots were cast in Wisconsin, according to their Supreme Court. Now, the problem is they don't know how to retrieve those ballots because they've already been cast. There is no way to trace how they voted. So what do you do about it? In Michigan, we know for a fact that voting machines were upgraded in Antrim County just before and just after the election, both of which are violations of Michigan law. So why does the election results stand when we're not following the election laws? I don't know. In all of these swing states, they didn't allow Republican challengers to have meaningful access to the ballots. So you have one side counting the ballots, which is totally against election law in every state in the union. So how can those counts stand? Anyway, so that's just what we know. That's not even getting into the speculative stuff. We also know that Joe Biden won fewer counties than any presidential candidate. At the same time, we are being asked to believe that he won more votes than any other presidential candidate in history. He won fewer counties and more votes than any winning presidential candidate in history. That's an odd combination, to win a small number of counties and more votes than ever. We also know that President Trump won more votes than any president in history, more than Barack Obama. Even at, if the fraud happened the way they say, his numbers were diminished, but we know still that he received more votes than any president in history. And not only that, but he won 19 out of 20 bellwether counties. Now, what's a bellwether county? A bellwether county is a county that's kind of in the middle. It's hard for a Republican to win, it's hard for a Democrat to win. And whenever it goes one way or the other, the whole country goes that way. So there's 20 counties who have almost a perfect record of predicting the presidential election. Whichever way that county goes, the country goes. Trump won 19 out of 20 of those bellwether counties. There's also some states like that. People who win Ohio generally win the election. If they win Ohio and Iowa, both, then they always win the election, at least for the last 150 years. Well, Trump won both Ohio and Iowa, but they're saying that he lost the election. People who win both North Carolina and Florida always win the election. Trump also won North Carolina and Florida. So if he didn't really win this election, then that's breaking all historical norms. What do we not know? So that was a few things that we know for sure. Now, what do we not know? We don't know exactly what to do about this. We all know there were laws broken, but nobody seems to know what to do about it. Well, I know what we would like to have done about it. I can almost hear you talking back through the computer. But the Constitution does spell out a plan in the 12th Amendment of how to select a president or a vice president in the case of that the elector system fails. Well, the only problem with that is the 12th Amendment was written before we combined the president and vice president on a single ticket. Back when it was written, you had the House would select a president by a vote of the House, where each state got one vote. So every state would have to vote as a delegation. You'd get one vote. Michigan would get one vote. Wisconsin gets one vote. In that case, Republicans have an advantage. The Senate would vote to select the vice president. Well, when the 20th Amendment came along, it combined the president and vice president, but it never really went back and addressed the voting procedure of the 12th Amendment. So, a law was passed in the 1870s that spelled out kind of what to do with the electors. The only thing is, it appears to be in opposition to the 12th Amendment, and it has never been tried by the Supreme Court to determine if it's constitutional or not. So we have this 1870-something law that they might try to go by this year, and we have the 12th Amendment that they might try to go by, and neither one of these has been clearly established as the path forward. We had a couple opportunities in the Supreme Court to handle this. There was a Pennsylvania challenge that went to the Supreme Court, and they put it on, they tabled it. And then there was the Texas lawsuit that would have brought all of the swing states into one case. It looked like a perfect setup for the Supreme Court to look this whole situation over and decide yes or no, yea or nay, on the constitutionality of what was happening. But they took a pass on that one. They said Texas didn't have standing to bring that case, which is kind of absurd. So again, the court looks at this stuff like kryptonite. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to be involved in the election. So that brings us to today. What can we do now, and what do we have to look forward to? So what can you do now? Well, there's a couple of really good examples in the Bible. The 9th chapter of Daniel, Daniel chapter 9. If you haven't read it yet, read it. Daniel in there is praying for his nation, and he's being so humble and repentant. And when he gets an answer, the Lord tells him he's highly esteemed in heaven. Daniel is, for being so humble and for caring about his country and for following his God. The 9th chapter of Daniel. Very, very good example for us to follow. Another one our pastor went over this morning is the 1st chapter of Nehemiah. And Nehemiah prays for his nation there. And it's very similar to Daniel's prayer. We have the promise in Chronicles where he says, if my people who are called by my name, that's Christians, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear them and I will heal their land. So we have a promise there. So that's something we can do today. Now, when it says humble yourself, we think, don't be prideful. That's a part of it. But I also think it means like fasting, making yourself low, lowly and needy. Give up a pleasure, give up some food, whatever, and pray like Daniel and Nehemiah. So that's something we can do now. What do we have to look forward to? Well, tomorrow is January 3rd. There's a couple of things going on tomorrow, a couple of big things. The new Congress will be seated, the Congress that was just elected in November, and I imagine they'll be voting for Speaker of the House tomorrow. So we can watch that. Nancy Pelosi has a narrow margin of a narrow majority in the House, but she had a tough time getting elected last time, so we'll see if she can be seated as the Speaker of the House again. Another big thing that's going on that hasn't received much attention is I believe there's ballots that are going to be examined in Georgia tomorrow. There's the guy who invented the QR codes, the square, not barcodes, but the square codes with all the squiggly lines. He's going to be looking at some paper ballots in Georgia to determine if they are fraudulent or if they are legit. And we'll be curious to hear the result of his scan. I'm not sure what the scope of that is, if it's one county, one certain batch of ballots, what exactly he's looking at. I'd like to know more about that, but if you hear something on that tomorrow, post it on Facebook or MeWe so we can hear about it. So that's a couple big things tomorrow. Then we have January 6th. It's right around the corner. That'll be Thursday. Wednesday? Okay. Oh, today is the 3rd, yeah. Okay, tomorrow is the 4th. Okay, tomorrow is when the Congress is seated and whatnot. Okay, so anyway, actually today they might be getting seated. It's January 3rd, I believe, in the Constitution, unless they rescheduled the day, but we'll find out tomorrow. So January 6th is the next big day. That's the day that the electoral vote is handed into Congress. Now this happens in an interesting way. You've probably already heard this. There's a joint session of the Senate and the House, so they're going to meet together in one chamber just like they do on the State of the Union speeches. And the President of the Senate, which is Mike Pence, will be running the meeting, and they're going to hand the electors into him. Now Mike Pence has made some comments that he is not going to try to, and I hate these words, overturn the election. All we're asking for, nobody wants the election overturned. We want the legal ballots to be counted and the illegal ballots to be removed. So we want a fair, free and fair election. But Mike Pence says that he's not going to override the states and select the alternate ballots or whatever. But there's other congressmen and representatives and senators who have said that they will object to the electors for Georgia, Michigan, the swing states. So what happens then? So then they break into the House and the Senate, and they talk for 2 hours. And here's where the path gets a little foggy, is how they have to take a vote. And how does that vote go down? According to the 12th Amendment or according to this 1870-something law? Well, there's a third path that I just learned of yesterday, and that's, I think, has a decent shot of happening. The third path is that Ted Cruz and some of the senators are going to request a select committee. They're going to request to delay the certification of the electors until a select committee can report back on election fraud. So what will happen is the vote would be tabled, the session would be rescheduled, and a select committee, what's a select committee? They would take so many Republicans, so many Democrats, form a committee. They would have some committee hearings to hear the evidence of voter fraud, and then they would come back, or election fraud, whichever way, and then they would come back and report to the full Senate. Then they would have their vote to receive the electors. Now, can that happen? Sure. January 6th is not in the Constitution. Only January 20th is in the Constitution. That's the day that the president one term ends and the next begins at noon on the 20th. So so this could happen. So that's the next thing to watch for is on the 6th. We're going to watch to see which electors are accepted and then which way they go. Now, so that was the third option. One good thing about that is I think it would almost force all of the media to cover the hearings of the evidence, which we're not hearing now. So it would be the first time some Americans are hearing about any of this because they've been watching the censorship news. And I think they would have to cover it. Of course, they would be spinning it as a big coup to try to overthrow the election or whatever. But I think they would have to cover it, which would be a good thing. So, in summary, I'm just going to close out here. What can we do? You can humble yourself and pray. And I encourage everyone to do that. Look at Daniel 9 and Nehemiah 1. Watch for news about these ballots in Georgia this week. And definitely watch on Wednesday the fireworks in Washington. We need to pray for the safety of our patriots that are going to Washington. They are sure to be met by some resistance from Antifa and Black Lives Matter and other Marxist groups who want to see the collapse of the American system, basically. We want to watch for the words delay the certification of the electors. So if there's some select committee, that's a good thing for us, right? They're actually going to see evidence at that point, and that means our side is winning. Otherwise, and what's our side? Our side is not for President Trump. Our side is for a free and fair election. Why would you want to hide the voting machines and hide the voting results if you are confident that Joe Biden got more votes than anyone ever in history? They should be saying, look at the machines, look at the ballots. Instead, everybody's trying to hide the ballots. They're trying to hide the machines. So look for this select committee and the actual presentation of evidence. And then the next thing is realize that you're not alone. There's like 80 million people in this country who feel like right is wrong and wrong is right and the news is always against you, but you're not alone. We are a majority, or at least equal in size to the opposition that's putting all this stuff forward. They have worked their way into having the bullhorns in this country, but the internet's changing that. Corporate news ratings are dropping. These internet channels are picking up. We're still sorting through who can be trusted and who can't. There's opportunities for young reporters to make a name and become a reliable source. We're searching for the truth. You know, when Jesus came, he said, I came to testify to the truth. Truth. He said, I am the truth, the way and the life. There's a lot of talk in the Bible about truth. It's a good source right there. So take care of yourself, take care of your families, take care of your neighbors. Even if this whole thing goes against us, we just need to realize that God has a plan. You know, he deals with nations, and maybe it's in his plan that America has to fall by the wayside so that world events can begin to happen that he needs to happen. I'm okay with that, but I want to do everything I can to bring out truth and justice while we have a chance. So just keep praying for that, praying for the Lord's will to be done, and don't let your faith be dependent on the outcome of this election. Let's just keep the faith, take care of each other, okay? We'll talk to you again another day.